Welcome to the Real Estate 401k Show. Here are your hosts, Ryan Gerdes, Mike Weinstein, and Justin Frederick, helping you build a legacy of wealth through real estate. Powered by the Recon Group at West USA and the Frederick team with Fairway Mortgage. NMLS number 625918.
Welcome back to the Real Estate 401k Show. I'm your host, Mike Weinstein, alongside Justin Frederick from Fairway Independent Mortgage and my partner, Ryan Gerdes. We talk about it a lot, the fact that we are real estate wealth managers and what that means. We are licensed real estate agents here in the state of Arizona. We can help you with the purchase or the sale. But our emphasis is more on how do we help our listeners, how do we help our clients truly build a legacy of wealth, or what Ryan likes to refer to, generational wealth, through real estate. Not all agents are created equal. Not all agents can handle investment portfolios and very advanced situations. And I think that's just the danger, because as a licensee, I can represent anyone in any kind of real estate transaction. The question is should I be? So we want to just, we just had a really interesting situation come across our desk where we had an investor reach out to us. And I was just trying to just imagine what the average typical uneducated real estate agent, how they would handle the situation. But we are now working with a savvy investor, just sold a commercial property, and all of the funds in the commercial property are now in a 1031 tax exchange. We will briefly chat about 1031 tax exchanges, but we are not QIs. We're not experts. We know experts. But really the point of the matter is this, Ryan, kind of paint the picture, because you took the call. And I just know when I got the call from you or the text from you, I'm like, oh, Ryan's in his wheelhouse. Like Ryan just woke up in a donut factory.
Yeah. So that's
a great.
I don't even know if he likes donuts. I've never seen you eat a donut.
I don't know the last time I had a donut, but I'm not
in a bourbon factory.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. I've been there recently. The cool thing about it is as cut and dry as some people try to make it. It always comes with its own nuances. And you have to create a plan and create a model that they never look the same, right? And so, moral of the story is once you close on, let's call it door number one. So door number one for this individual was a multi-million-dollar commercial property. He had 45 days to identify enough property that we're going to satisfy his 1031. Now, you don't need to satisfy an entire 1031. You can take a portion of that, put it into your pocket, and then pay taxes on it. But if you are wanting to defer those taxes, notice I did not say avoid.
Defer. It's a tax deferment program.
Right, you're deferring taxes until you do a final liquidation or die, whichever one comes first. You have 45 days to identify a property or properties that are going to equal or
be greater.
Equal or greater in order to avoid full tax exposure. And again, we're not QIs, not CPAs, any of that fun stuff, but this stuff speak pretty intelligently on. And then from there, you have 180 days in order to close. So that being said, we've been scrambling because I got a phone call.
We had 36 days.
Yeah, we had. I think day 12. After he closed on door number one, that we had to identify enough property in order to.
I'm pretty confident the only day I got off was Christmas Day.
Yeah, I even worked on Christmas Day, but that's perfectly fine by me. And so we've been scrambling, trying to find, because that's the issue here. You don't, as an investor, the last thing you want to do is make decisions based on desperation. Mm-hmm. You want to be able to do things that you can be patient on and that you can make sure opportunities are coming your way because you're putting yourself strategically in the right positions. When you come late to the game or without some preparation, then you might have to start making some decisions that you probably wouldn't have made otherwise. So, we built our model out. We sat down and we said, all right, here's my model. Here's what I would do.
Okay, and I want to stop you there. So that's key one. That is what we do as real estate wealth managers, is not just run to the fire and buy or sell stuff. It's let's talk about what the model is. What is the end game? What is the goal of what we're doing right now?
So what our model was with that is to go from one door, one property, the commercial property, and diversify it over into 5. Okay, there's a number of reasons behind that. Number one, financing constraints. He had to take on debt in order to satisfy his 1031, and so when for his personal situation, once he went above 5 different loans, then he would have had to go into a different loan program that it was going to be a lot more expensive. So we had to confine all the 1031 factors into 5. So then from there we say, okay, what are we looking for out of those 5? How are we going to diversify that? So we did a couple of them that are single family, and then the rest of them we've been doing multifamily, because he did want to keep it into the residential realm. He did want to use some of it to grow his business, which he did. So that's great. That's awesome. But other than that, I'm over here scrambling, looking at every single one of these doors on every single one of these multifamilies and single families, doing a pro forma on each and every single one of those, because he wanted to make sure they cash flowed. We didn't need a serious amount of cash flow, but we needed some. We wanted to make sure that they're in desirable areas that we felt were going to perform at a good to great level on the appreciation side. So if it didn't cash flow, then it better perform well on the appreciation side, right?
Right.
And so we wrote out a model that balanced those two things out. And so from there, we were able to pull the numbers, do our pro formas, and identified more than enough property to satisfy our 1031, and we started pulling triggers.
All right, before we get to you, Justin, and I just want to encourage for our listeners, if you are looking for some advanced wealth building strategy, go ahead and text the word wealth to 623-AZ-RECON. That's wealth to 623-AZ-RECON. I do in a minute want to jump over to Justin and kind of talk about what you got to do on your side on all the financing stuff. But one of the things that I want you to highlight a little bit, Ryan, and if you are working with an agent and they are not doing this for you or don't know how to do it for you, you need to take careful stock in who you're working with. But part of the things that we do when we're taking a look at these properties, because you could look at 300 properties, but you kind of briefly just touched a pro forma, what that pro forma is, something that we do on our group and on our team, and how that is beneficial, and then looking at cap rates. I am amazed. I talk to so many sellers out there, and they're saying they're thinking about selling their property, and I ask them, well, what is your agent telling you as far as the cap rate on the property? And they just look at me like a deer in a headlight, but it's such an integral part if you're truly building a portfolio of real estate.
It has all to do with this. I'm sorry.
I think you should tell the listeners what a cap.
That's what I was kind of leading him in.
So a cap rate, it defines whether or not, in layman's terms, whether or not something is the juice is worth the squeeze. So if I have $100,000 worth of real estate, it's making me $1,000 a month. In our world, that's pretty damn good.
That's really damn good.
Yeah. But if I have $1 million worth of real estate making me $1,000 a month,
not so good.
Not good at all, right?
And that would be a lower cap rate, and the lower the cap rate, the worse.
Right, exactly. So what we're doing is we're taking our net operating income per year and dividing that by what our total acquisition cost is. And then additional renovations. So if you buy a property that's in distress and you need to put $50,000 into it, you tack that onto your acquisition costs, right? So that number is going to spit out a percentage, right? And so current cap rate that's considered competitive right now is anywhere between 5 and 6, okay? If you're above a 6, you're doing good. Below a 5, there better be some other compensating factors in order for you to make that decision, okay? So we're going to, and that's fairly simple math. Most people can calculate that pretty quickly out there on the spot. So first blush, that's what we're looking at, right? And then we're throwing in there on our pro forma not only what the cap rate is, what our expected monthly expenses are itemized, so we can find out whether or not we're heavy or light, and when we start doing our actuals. We're finding out what our passive income position is. That's going to confirm whether or not the model is for us or not. And then what type of equity position that we're walking into. So if we're buying full retail, we buy something for $1 million and it's worth 1.1, that's a good compensating factor. And then I'm going to build that out over 5 years based on recent data, okay? So we know that year over year, over a long enough timeline, we're seeing 5% interest rates on rental income, okay? And then we're seeing 2% increases on utilities, maintenance, et cetera. We're also seeing increases whenever it comes to appreciation. So I don't know if I already mentioned that, but we're going to build that out, all those numbers over the next 5 years. So your introductory cap rate, meaning the one that you have from the day that you buy your property, it's going to change every year. Why is that? Because your acquisition cost, for the most part, is going to remain the same, but the rental rates are going to go up as well as expenses going up. And so what does the next 5 years look like?
And then you can take a look at it. Is there any expenses that I can cut or minimize to improve my cap rate? But this really just becomes, I mean, it's just an example. And so if you're listening to this podcast and you're working with an agent or know an agent, ask them about the cap rate on your house and the 5-year pro forma, and you'll see the difference. But go ahead and text the word wealth to 623-AZ-RECON. Regardless, we're not here to disparage anyone. We're here to help you build a legacy of wealth through real estate. Again, text the word wealth to 623-AZ-RECON. So we are on that side of the real estate aspect of this story, Justin, and doing contracts and looking at properties and so forth. But you're handling all the financing on this transaction. What's going on in that scenario, and what should our listeners be aware of?
So 1031 exchange, typically most investors have it in the name of a business because the business owned the previous piece of property, so it had to go into the business name when we close it. So on residential lending, typically we lend to individuals for residents, right? In this specific scenario, we had to lend to a business. So that requires specific products. In this scenario, we had to find products that were going to give us the best interest rates to help make the properties perform. And so that's really what we were digging into there. Obviously, I have to supply you guys with the information to help you build out those cap rates on how these properties are going to perform. But we had to dig through. We dug through it. I want to say 150 jumbo products to finally come out, because we not only did we have to first start with guidelines. Can we lend to a business? What does this require for reserves for each property, each door? What does it require for credit scores? What does it require for down payment? And then we just kept searching through these. And then after that, you got to look at what the interest rates are. So once we would figure out what the guidelines would work for this, what's the interest rate? And so we just kept bouncing through until we had about 5 great options, and then we needed to narrow it down from there. And obviously, we were leaning more towards best performance. And so there's a lot of moving parts within that. And then, not only do we have to communicate with you guys, we got to communicate with the sellers, getting the rental agreements, communicate with the 1031, communicate with title. There's a lot going on, but we found a great product for them, and we found up backup products if we needed to. Like Ryan said earlier, if we went above 5, we would have to move to a different product, and that was just based on reserves, credit, all that good stuff. But we had some backups just in case you guys found some other good properties, which we still might have to take advantage of.
Yeah.
We're still in that phase where we don't know exactly if we're going to have to take advantage of that, but we could. But there is a lot of products within Fairway that we have to lend to a business, which is another reason why I'm at Fairway. It's not a lot of lending institutions will lend to a business, and it feels good to be able to offer products when they come up to be able to do these.
All right, if you're looking for advanced real estate portfolio strategies and investment strategies, implore you to text the word wealth to 623-AZ-RECON. Have a conversation with one of our real estate wealth managers. I want to end on this note, Ryan. I can't help but think there are a lot of our listeners right now are going, wow, that's really way in advance for me. It would be nice one day to have these problems. I've just got a home and I'm thinking about selling it. This is when you have these conversations because you want to get to that point. And I think oftentimes for a lot of homeowners, they just make decisions based on what they're told. And when you are selling, when you're thinking about selling home number one, that is an imperative time to sit down with a real estate wealth manager and think about the long-term game.
And you know what the best part is? I've never seen more inquiring minds at any given point in time in this industry as there is now. More people are interested in understanding the idiosyncrasies and the laws and the rules and the do's and the don'ts of real estate more so than they have now.
I agree.
I would even when I first got into this business and I really started digging into the investment space. I mean, a lot of people were just like, well, I guess if it makes me a little bit of money month over month and I can turn around and sell it for more, sounds good to me. But there's a lot of lost opportunity.
It goes a
there.
lot deeper than
Right,
that. Right.
yeah. And so, like those are that in those scenarios, we're talking about real costs. We're talking about real expenses. But I mean, the thing that was impressed upon me the most in business school was opportunity costs.
Yeah.
And putting business behind these things. It's so funny how people will put all kinds of business into an ice cream shop. And there's a presentation, I'm not going to get into it, but all the moving parts that it takes just to sell that first scoop of ice cream.
Yeah.
And people will put more thought process, more business, more model, more systems into selling that one scoop of ice cream than they do investing in $1 million real estate property. And so we've systematized it. We've organized it, and we've made it a hell of a lot easier to understand. I know we're getting into the weeds here with a lot of these things, but when we sit down and we have a conversation with you about it, we are going to make sure that you walk away knowing where all the loose ends are.
It's funny, we're talking about cap rates, and you're talking about how many people have inquiring minds and doing their research. And a lot of times when people text us, they're familiar with cap rates. They're familiar with these things. Sometimes they're doing the research. They're avid listeners of this podcast. Earlier this week, I was doing a training for approximately 30 other real estate agents, not part of our team. And so we were talking about some of these strategies, and I asked, and this is the first time that this has ever happened where 0 people raised their hand. Sometimes it's just 1 or 2. I said, how many of you in this room know how to factor a cap rate? And not one hand went up. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, I wonder how many of these agents,
yeah,
they were all real estate agents. How many of these agents are working with people who identified themselves as investors?
That's scary, man. They
know it now because we trained them.
Yeah, I mean, all I can say is I hope that they either wise up or get out. I mean, we were all there too. There was a time where we didn't know any of these things, and we sat through real estate school and just kind of, okay, did my 90 hours, let's cram to get a license, because don't get it twisted. Just because somebody has a license does not mean that they know jack shit about real estate, okay?
They just know how to take 90 hours worth of class and pass 2 tests.
The barrier of entry is nearly nil. It's basically 1 month worth of hell, right? Like you go through more trials and tribulations during the first trimester of the wife's pregnancy, right? It's very easy to get a real estate license if you apply yourself. It's understanding the industry and understanding how to run that business. Yeah. That's where it gets tricky.
All right. We would love to have a conversation with you and help you build that real estate investment strategy. All you got to do is text the word wealth to 623-AZ-RECON. That's wealth to 623-AZ-RECON.
Thank you for joining us on the Real Estate 401k Show. If you want more information on how to build wealth, click on the link or text us at 623-297-3266. That's 623 AZ Recon.